This video may contain offensive language or be frightening to some viewers. Viewer discretion is recommended. Ticci Toby. Prologue. I listened to my feet pounding against the hallway's floor as I ran towards my class with my late pass in hand. I wasn't supposed to be sprinting in the halls, but the teachers are too busy teaching the other students to notice a 13-year-old girl running past their door. I started panting. God, why did they put the middle school classrooms in the other side of the school? I whispered to myself while I continued to run. The corner I was supposed to turn at came into view, so I started to slow down a little. But that didn't help because I ran into a tall boy who I accidentally knocked down, along with myself. He stood up and stepped over to me, holding out his long arm. I reached up and gladly took his hand before he pulled me up with no problem. Thanks, and sorry for running into you. He smiled lightly before shaking his head. You're welcome, and it's alright. I'm Toby Rogers. I just moved here. I smiled at him, completely forgetting that I was about an hour late for English class. I'm Alyssa Parker. Welcome to the town. He smiled at me again before looking down at the ground with his chocolate brown eyes. Then he bent down and picked up something. This is yours, right? I looked at his hand, and he held my blue slip of paper that held the information on why I was late. My eyes widened as I snatched the paper out of his hand before walking around him. I gotta go. I'm really late for English class, but we can probably talk later. Okay. I'll see you at lunch then, he said. I nodded and smiled at him one more time before turning and running off again towards the room where I would get in huge trouble. End of school day. The school bell went off, indicating that all of us were finally allowed home, and all the students got up from their seats and headed towards the door. I did the same and went to my locker. I did the combination and unlocked the lock, opening the door to reveal my backpack and hoodie. I grabbed my hoodie and slipped it on, along with the grey backpack. I sighed with relief as I closed my locker door before I was tapped on the shoulder. I turned my head and looked to them, only to be met with familiar chocolate brown eyes. I smiled at him. Hey, Toby, what's up? I asked him. He smiled back at me before shrugging his shoulders. I don't know. We didn't get to hang out at lunch, so I was wondering if we could hang out now somewhere. I smiled and nodded at him before turning with him and walking down the hallway towards the entrance of the school. I thought for a second. Where do you want to hang out? I wasn't sure on that, so I was gonna ask you. I thought as we started walking down the cement sidewalk, watching the buses drive by us. How about the arcade or the park? He just shrugged. Or just my house, I suppose. He nodded, and I smiled at him. He gladly returned it afterwards, before we turned a corner on the block. 2 years later. Toby, no fair! I yelled at the 16-year-old boy sitting next to me, who had a game controller in his hands. I turned to him and smacked his arm. He chuckled. "Oh, Alyssa, it's completely fair. You weren't paying attention." I smacked him again and glared at him as he just chuckled lightly again. "Oh yeah? 'Cause you're distracting me." I threw the controller on the couch and stood up from it before heading towards the kitchen. I sighed and walked over to the refrigerator, opening it up and grabbing the orange juice. I put the juice back, then leaned against the counter while quietly sipping the drink. Then Toby walked in. "Really?" I nodded. "Okay. You drink orange juice when you're stressed, mad, or tired, and I'm guessing you're mad." I nodded once more before walking over and putting the cup in the sink. "It's just a game, Alyssa." I looked at the wall and sighed, looking down as I saw Toby, out of the corner of my eye, lean against the counter next to me. "I know it is. I just get frustrated easily, and you know that. I'm sorry, I overreacted, Toby." He just chuckled and put a hand on my shoulder before pulling me into a hug. God, this is so dramatic. "Yup, and it's alright, shorty," he said. I instantly let go and looked up at him, glaring at him. He chuckled once more. "You're gonna get it, Toby." He turned and started speed walking out of the room, but I was right behind him. I grabbed his shoulders as we walked. "Don't make me hurt you." 1 year later. Toby was walking by my side on our way back to my house before he suddenly stopped me. I turned to him. "Alyssa, there's something I need to tell you." I furrowed my brow at his sudden words before gesturing him to continue. His eyes were a little glossy. "Alyssa, I'm moving away in a week. To Georgia." My eyes widened, and I thought my heart stopped. I felt some tears brimming in my eyes as I looked at him. His eyes were the same. I grabbed his shoulders and pulled him into a tight hug as some tears fell. He instantly hugged back. "Why do you have to move all the way to Georgia?" He pulled back a little, but hugged me again. "My dad's job. We can still keep in touch, though." I pulled back and looked at him, with tears running down my face. "I know it won't be the same." I shook my head. No, it won't." 3 days later. Attention Broadwood. There has been a terrible house fire on Jackson Street. The Rogers household has been burnt down an hour and a half ago, and the fire department has put the fire out. Right now, as you can see, firemen are searching what's left of the house for any survivors or bodies of anyone who was in the fire. They did find 3 bodies already, and they have been identified. They were Lyra Rogers, Caroline Rogers, and Jacob Rogers. The firemen believe that Caroline and Jacob were husband and wife, and mother and father of Lyra. They did have a son, Toby Rogers, but his body was not found in the house anywhere, but they are still looking for him. We will keep you informed with more details as more I shut off the TV, tears already falling down my face as I sobbed over the now dead family I knew for 3 years. It wasn't the whole family, but it was very close. Lyra, Caroline, and Jacob were dead, and Toby is missing. Hopefully he is alive. No, he is alive. I know he is. I hope he is. As fast as he could, and suddenly was face to face with none other than his dead sister. Her eyes were clouded white, her skin pale, and the right side of her jaw only dangled by tissue and muscle.